Okay guys, good morning. As promised, we will be continuing our lesson, which is the using of list view for adding data and also by editing and deleting. So since we have done the adding part, right now what we'll be doing is we will be editing it again to add and edit, delete. So we had it done last time, but please be reminded that if we will be adding a new. Okay, we will be adding or continuing this. Be sure to watch the previous lesson so that you could follow through on our tutorial. Okay, so since we do have the add function already, what we will be doing is we will be adding an edit and delete function. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna be putting in another column on our list view for editing, and the other one is for deleting. Now, remember, I'm just putting in the delete function so that you could use it if you want it to be used. But always do remember that deleting data into our database is always going to be an optional function and should be analyzed first before you do delete anything. So please be reminded of that. So what we're gonna be doing is we'll be adding two buttons for adding in the first one. Okay, let's put it side. Okay, and then the other one, well, okay. So these two buttons will be, the first one is for editing and the other one is for deleting. Okay, so we have button 2 and button number 3. Okay, so okay, sorry, let's use a link button. I think it's much more better if we use a link button rather than a button. It's much more better because a link button looks like a link that you need to click. There we go. Oops. Okay, and then what we'll be doing is we will be specifying something on this buttons because we need to identify which data we will be editing and we will be deleting. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is if we go to design and we click here, you can see the link buttons. Let's edit it first. Let's put in, we do not put in link button. Let's put in edit and delete. So remember, this is just an option for you to do. Want to add it, states that we want to delete or edit this data. Okay, so if we go to the design and we go to the events tab, okay, we have here an item command function for the list view. So let's put in list view 1 underscore command, and that will be our, that's going to be our function later if you want to click it. Okay, so let's proceed first to our design. Let's go to this. So as you can see here, the list view 1 command is added. Okay, so what is the list view command on item command? So if you click any item, there's a specific command that it will need to be executed in our code if we do click this button. So the command name, okay, we will add here a command name, and this command name will be added into our code. So the command name, if we click edit, the command name should be, okay, the command name is going to be edit data. Okay, edit data. While on the other hand, on the other one, the command name will be for to delete the data. Okay, so it will just execute the data that we, or the command that we are stating. But there's also a catch. So if we are clicking on the list in every row, what we need to do is to identify what data do we need to get, so that we could specifically identify what it is that we want to edit or to delete. So we will get data from it. So I'll be adding in command argument. Okay. And this command argument is going to be the data that we have added here, which is going to be the chart eval or the ID. Okay, so we will be using the ID. So same thing with the other one, we will be adding a command argument below with the same format. So if we do click edit data, it will get the value of the ID of the data that we want to edit. If we do click delete data, it will still get the ID of the data that we want. Okay, so let's go ahead and proceed with the code. So remember, when you click any of the buttons, the list view one command will be the one to be executed. So you need to identify first what are the commands. So we will be putting in if, okay, the command name is to edit data. Okay, so since we did click, let's say for example, the edit button, then this means that it will execute this code. However, on the other hand, if we do click the other one, then we should be stating that if the command is to delete the data, then it will execute this one. Okay, so the E represents the command event here. So that's what the command name is. Check what it is that we want to execute because we clicked on the list view. So the first thing is for the let's put in first the deleting of data. Okay, so let's delete first a data. So the first thing that we will be doing is we will be adding a string for deleting the data. So delete str. Okay, so let's do it the other way. I'm gonna be teaching you another way to do it. Let's go directly and use SQL command on this one. Okay, let's put in using system.data.sql client. Okay, do not forget this one. We still are using um, two web forms. So put in string, SQL command, delete cmd. Okay, so this time I will not be using a string. So because last time what we did was we always do declare a string when we want to delete something or add something or edit something. But for this one, I will not be using string and with another way. So how do we do that? So we declare the new SQL command that we have created, but this time we'll not, since we did not use a string, we could immediately add here the SQL that we could generate to delete. Select from TBL persons where ID is equals to @ID. There we go. And of course, we need to add the existing connection. So con class .con. So as you can see, we need not to declare a string, but sometimes it's very useful to specify the string first so that it will be much more easier to use if you're gonna be using it 2 times, but still you just do it in one line. It's not necessary to do 2 lines for it. Just teaching you a lot of things how to use this code. Okay, so we will be adding a parameter because we need to identify the ID of the what we're gonna be using or to identify to delete it. So we will be adding a value to the parameter that we declared, which is @ID. But the question is, where will it come from? Okay, so very simple. Since we declared a command argument earlier, so the @ID will be containing the command argument. And then let's let's open the connection again. So remember, if you open this one, you should also close .con.close. Then let's execute it. So I'll delete cmd.execute non-query. Okay. So let's reload this view one. Fresh. So we have deleted it here. Let's see if it will work on the program. We will be viewing it first. Okay, so we could delete the number 4. Okay, right now if we refresh it, we have lost data number 4. That's how you delete data. Now if you want to edit this one, now this is going to be another way of doing it, because if we want to edit this one, we need to go to the area of the adding form. We will be adding here another button, and this one is for updating. Okay, so update, because you want to edit, have the update button. Okay, so what we will be doing is we will have a scenario that we need to identify what we want to do and remove any buttons that we do not need to save, then we do not need date, etc. So we need to identify what we are doing. Okay, so for now, we will not be setting it up. We'll just have the codes on update or save. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to the web form 1 and let's configure command for the editing. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I will be declaring a session ID. Okay, so let's put in session, and then I'm gonna be using the PID as the session variable. So this means, or the ID as the variable for session variable for this one. So we need to identify what is the name of our data that we want to edit. That command argument that to string. There we go. So we will need to get it. Okay. And then of course we need to identify if we are trying to edit or not. Okay. So we need to know the status, because if we want to edit, we need to identify what are we doing right now. So are we adding a data, or are we saving a new data? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead a class and declare a simple variable public, a simple integer public static int um edit ctr equals to 0. So the value of this is it will be able to identify if I'm editing or not. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back to the web form, and since I have clicked the edit command, I will set the variable edit ctr to 1. So it identifies that I am going to be editing. Then I'll go to the other page. So let's go to add.asp. So what we did was we identified that we are editing, so it goes to 1. And then we declared an ID that will get the command argument that we click. So it will then get the ID. And we will go directly back to adding form. So on the sorry, on the update, we need to identify what are we going to do, because it sometimes we need to immediately, since we are gonna be clicking a data, so we need to immediately find the data that we are trying to edit. Okay, so what do? So we go to the load page. Okay, and then since, okay, if con class that edit ctr is equals to 1, so that means we are trying to edit something, it will load immediately the id. Okay, so the first thing that it will do is it will set the txt id that text coming in from the session id, which is the id. Okay, it's good. So we need not a dot to string, we need a dot to string, just to be sure. Okay, and then what it will do is it will put in the id into the txt id that text. Okay, so let's put in and let's identify the data that we need to add. So string select str is equals to select asterisk, so all the fields from tbl persons where id is equals to @id. So this will search for the data. Okay, so it will search the data from the table that we want to edit. So sql command select cmd is equal to new command, and then of course this one we have select str and the active connection, which is the call. Okay, and then select cmd, so we add in the parameters, that add with value. Okay, and then we will be putting in on the id @id the one that we have in the txt id.text. Okay. So what it will do is it will fill up informations into the text boxes automatically. This is the code that will do it. Okay, so what we're gonna be doing is we will create a table. So data table. Okay, add one more on our library using system data. So data table, okay, is equals to new data table. And then we will have an SQL data adapter that will get the data or will carry out the data from the database. So it will use cd select cmd command. Okay, and then it will fill the data table that da that fill that fill the data table. There we go. So the next thing is what it will do, it will extract the data from the data table, and please be reminded that we are using the number of fields that we have, so 0, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so what I'm going to do is going to be putting in the name coming in from the data table, that text equals to dt dot rows. So the first row is 0 in counting, and it should have there the name that to string. Okay, so let's copy this two more times. So the address will also be added. Sorry, product also. Address. and also the so after that the con class that con that edit uh con class eh, I'm sorry, that edit CTR is going to be back to 0. So we just do this if we are just doing this if we want to load the data. So if we're not editing anymore, we don't load the data in. Okay, so we will not be putting in codes on our else. Okay, so let's see if it works. So let's go first to our web form 1, then run it, and let's see if it will be able to load the data immediately into the next page. If go and click on John Smith. Oh, I'm sorry. So I forgot to add one more. Tap that. Let's go back to the add function. What's the problem? TXT. I'm sorry. So I did not change this one into H. Run it again. Test it. Should be able to identify what it is that we want to edit. So if you want to edit John Smith, cancel. You want to edit Michael Cook, cancel. So if we add new data, it doesn't have any data that we want to do, cancel. So we just want to edit or update. Okay, so let's go ahead and set the code for update. So just during. So here's what we're gonna be doing. We'll be adding a function. So string update str. You know how we do it. So update tbl person set id. We should not be setting the id because it should not be editable, right? Okay, so we will just be setting the name. It's equals to at name, then address equals to at address, and then we also have the age equals to at age. Okay, where the id is equals to at id. There we go. So because we usually do not need to edit the id, we just edit the data within that id. Okay, so let's put in sql command update cmd is equals to new sql command update str. So as again we could use either way. If we want to directly type it on the parentheses, that will be good for you. It depends on you guys. So I just do it this way so that it could be properly readable for the student. If you are more advanced in programming, other way in it, there's a lot of ways to do it. Okay, so the next is we will update the parameters. So update cmd dot parameters dot add with value. So we do have 4, so we need to use this 4 times. So at id coming in from txt id dot text. So do not forget the dot text, because if you do not include this, it will not have an error, but it will save the name of the button or the object. So 3 and 4 at name address and age. So change this to name, change this to the address, and change this to the age. Okay. And then also, since the proper way to do it is you open our connection .con.open and remember to close it. Con class.con.close. Then let's execute. So update cmd execute non-query. There we go. And then of course, what we need to do is, of course, let's have the con class dot con dot it sorry class dot edit ctr equal to 1 means it's ready to. Okay, so, sorry, let's try it first, just to be sure. Let's see, try, let's cancel, and then let's change Russia to Manila date. Go back. Okay, so there you go, it has been updated. I wasn't too able to add in the redirection, so let's just put here response dot redirect. Then let's put here web form 1 dot ASP. So go ahead, copy this one to ensure that there will be no problem on the web forms. I'm gonna be going to uh, on the add new button. So I'm gonna be going to changing to 0, so that it does not load up anything. So it will only load up something if just in case it clicks on the edit function. Okay, so I think that's it. So let's try it one more time. I think the program is complete. Okay, so let's add a new data. Let's say number 4, since we don't have another one. Jenny Smith, Manila, 21. Save. Okay, then if we want to edit, let's say New York, let's change this to Manila, and then update. Okay, there you go. So of course, if you want to add new data, what you will need to do is to identify if you're adding or editing. What you need to do is go to add and go to the page load. If the page load is editing, then you could set that the buttons, go ahead and check on the buttons. The button one, okay, so the button one should disappear if you're editing, and you should be able to see the update if you're updating. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So if you're editing, then button one dot visible is equals to false, and the button tree should be visible if you're trying to edit. Okay. Other hand, so let's add an else here. So if the editing is not active, then the button one should be visible, and the other is false. Okay. Let's try to look at it. Run it from the form 1, add new data. Okay, cancel if you had to edit data. Okay, so we're seeing it. So still we are using a one form only, and I think that's good. So this is the add edit function, complete using a list in ASP.NET. So again, this is Sir Arca, and if you like this video, like and subscribe to my channel. Want to have more tutorials on the basics of ASP.NET, then you can comment on our comment section. We can do more tutorials for you guys. Again, that this is these tutorials are for beginners that you could they could be able to start with their programming. And if you do have questions, just comment below. Again, this is Sir Arca, and have a nice day, guys.